With an annual revenue exceeding $100 million, the Southern Poverty Law Center operates as a primary authority for civil rights monitoring in the United States. When the organization launched in 1971, it focused on courtroom litigation and legal research to combat active domestic extremists and provide protection for marginalized groups. Over time, the group shifted from the courtroom to broader monitoring. They began publishing an annual hate map, a definitive index used to categorize specific groups and individuals as social outcasts. This transition from litigation to monitoring positioned the group to define the boundaries of acceptable public discourse. Prominent American institutions adopted this data as a standardized metric for moral vetting, beginning with the mainstream media. Since 2010, the New York Times cited the SPLC as an authority over 700 times, using their statistics to frame major cultural events. Tech giants and financial institutions also integrated this data, relying on these specific lists to justify deplatforming users or freezing payment services. Amazon used these designations to exclude organizations from its Amazon Smile charity program, effectively cutting off a global stream of private donations for any group on the list. Institutional trust in the SPLC became so ingrained that its data served as the default baseline for corporate and legal targeting protocols. That institutional reliance was challenged when the acting Attorney General announced a federal indictment against the Southern Poverty Law Center. The 11-count indictment includes specific charges of wire fraud, bank fraud, and a conspiracy to commit money laundering. The Department of Justice alleges the SPLC secretly funded the same extremist activity it publicly opposed, paying sources to generate the very racial hatred it was ostensibly monitoring. The single organization trusted by corporate and legal entities to track hate groups is now accused of acting as their primary financier. Between 2014 and 2023, prosecutors say the SPLC funneled over $3 million to field sources embedded in violent organizations. According to the charges, these payments went directed to leaders within the Ku Klux Klan and the American Nazi Party. One member of the leadership team behind the 2017 Unite the Right event in Charlottesville allegedly received $270,000 from the SPLC. While the SPLC website publicly denounced these individuals as extremists, the organization was allegedly cutting them checks and coordinating their activities in the background. These alleged actions ensured the continued existence of the specific threats that motivated the SPLC's donor base. Large advocacy nonprofits face an inherent economic conflict. If the problem they were created to fight is resolved, their primary source of funding disappears. This chart highlights the amygdala, the brain's emotional center. In an outrage-based economy, messaging is designed to trigger this fear response and bypass the reasoning of the prefrontal cortex. When an organization presents an escalating, viral threat of violence, it triggers this biological fear loop, ensuring a steady stream of donations from concerned citizens. Because the actual incidence of organized white supremacy is statistically rare in modern America, prosecutors allege the SPLC worked to artificially increase the supply. These charges raise significant questions for the corporations and news outlets that treated the SPLC as a definitive source. Outlets like the New York Times and retailers like Amazon destroyed reputations and severed financial lifelines, based on data that federal prosecutors now characterize as a criminal fabrication. This case exposes the risk of a society that blindly outsources its moral date-keeping to ideologically driven third-party groups. The institutions that relied on the SPLC found their vetting systems dependent on designations that are now the subject of a federal fraud investigation. The federal charges directly impact the credibility of civil rights monitoring, creating a trust gap that complicates the work of legitimate watchdogs. This indictment serves as a prompt to evaluate the emotional framing used by media influencers to generate fear of your neighbors. While lucrative narratives often push the idea of a deeply divided country, polling data suggests the vast majority of Americans are increasingly tolerant and supportive of diverse communities. In a system where fear is highly profitable, the individuals warning you about a fire are sometimes the same ones paying the arsonists.